Hope you did too.
2 weeks off.
Did you get behind down in the hole in this?
But, no, I was like, dude,
Right. We're ready, Mayor. Yeah.
burned out. Okay.
Okay.
How are you? Road and bridges.
Yes, sir.
Presentation.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Clint, you're up.
Ready? All right.
10 minutes.
We won't even need that much, I don't think.
Road.
We're on a tight schedule, it sounds like. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all today. So this is really just an update of some coordination that engineering is doing with Greenville County. We've got a couple of folks from Greenville County, Heisha Gamble with Public Works and Engineering, and T. Coker is over building permits and planning and long-range planning for the county. So
Assistant
glad-
County Manager.
Yes, so glad they could join us today. We can go to the next slide. So county is essentially doing what we've been doing with a lot of the other municipalities in the county's been doing for the last couple of years, is kind of looking at overall infrastructure and the needs that we've got. And more importantly, kind of looking at kind of the cost of maintaining infrastructure and the cost of making improvements to our infrastructure. So, so we're coordinating with them right now on what we're calling a countywide infrastructure inventory and assessment. We've kind of have been working with them. The county's been working with their Public Works Infrastructure Committee and identifying just kind of state of infrastructure throughout the county. Primarily, we're focusing on roads and bridges, but just really looking at the state of things, looking at just all of the needs that are out there as far as the condition of these roads from a basic maintenance standpoint, the need that we have from the way just this county is growing so significantly fast. So we have just safety improvements that are needed to kind of correspond to the growth, and as well as just capacity upgrades that are needed to respond to the growth we're seeing. So got a few just, you know, kind of statistics and highlights from some of their recent studies and reports that they've been making, but you can kind of see, I mean, we've got a large percentage of the bridges that are restricted and or closed, and 61% of the roads throughout the county are in poor condition or fair condition. So on December 5th, County Council passed a resolution to direct their staff to begin looking at this countywide inventory of roads and bridges assessment and just overall inventory. And in that resolution, it directed staff to begin working with the local municipalities and the SCDOT on pulling together this information. So we can go to the next slide. So we've started this coordination and some conversations with the county, and this will be an ongoing effort over the next month or so. And we'll kind of see where it leads to, but we're pulling our data from a lot of the planning studies that we've done over the last couple of years. Obviously, our pavement management report, our SCDOT bridge inspection data that we have. We've looked at the GPAT's kind of long range plan, the projects that are in the city, and really just trying to identify, you know, projects within our city limits that we consider are critical needs for us. We've identified our corridor projects, and Nick's going to talk about some of these in more detail, but we've identified corridor projects, intersection capacity improvements, and bridge, you know, our bridge project needs. So with that, we will jump to the next slide. Nick will talk about some of these projects.
Yeah, so in putting together our list and coming up with a preliminary idea of what are we going to start talking about with SCDOT in the county, we were looking at the GPAT's long range plan, as well as our master plans, our safety studies, our roadway safety audits, DOT's roadway safety audits. Where do they overlap? Where are all the common occurrences of accidents? Where's the current congestion? Where's the congestion projected to? So a lot of these are not going to surprise you at all. You have your Wade Hamptons, your Lawrence Roads, Academies, Pleasantburgs. But there's also some of the existing 2-lane roads that are on here. So Salters Road, Ridge Road, Dallas Road. We're seeing a lot of development in those areas. There's a lot of need for improvement. And one of the big things that we're going to be looking at as we go forward is how do we both improve safety on all of these, but also how do we improve congestion and reduce congestion issues. So this is the corridors. The next slide, and you'll see a lot of overlap, is focus point intersections. So there's a lot of overlap on the major corridors versus the intersections. So you'll see, if you were traveling along Pleasantburg, we'll have an intersection at 385, at East North, and at Wade Hampton. So there's a lot of overlap in our planning studies between our intersection safety study, GPAT's long range plans, our roadway safety audits. We've identified these intersections in multiple different other sources. And so we've kind of compiled those and put them together in this list. On this slide, there's also a few bridges that we're going to focus on. So we have Hilly Street, Queen Street, and the I-85 Lawrence Road interchange. So there's a few major bridge projects. Hilly Street, we want to focus on as well. We're launching the Greenville-Spartanburg area plan right now. So we just had the kickoff meetings for that. So we expect Hilly Street Bridge to be a major component of that process as well.
So this is just going to be an ongoing kind of conversation over the next month or so with the county. I know they're going to be having more meetings on their end, as well as some of the other municipalities of pulling this countywide infrastructure information together.
And those dates have they been set? Not yet, okay. But it's coming soon, so we wanted to make sure that we had go ahead and get the conversation started with our city council as those conversations start to continue with the county.
And this is great because a lot of my district county is next door. I mean, just circular. So this makes sense because when it's flooding, they don't care if you're in the city or the county.
Yeah.
The water just runs and messes up. So
yeah.
Well, and
We
a lot of the
appreciate
projects do run between the city and the county because they cross the jurisdictions,
That's
which is
exactly
one of the
right.
reasons we wanted to identify these because they impact both the city and will impact the county too.
and this is great.
But in that first slide, Clint, or go back where it had the counties, kind of the county's inventory
Mm-hmm.
there. All right, so let's see. 15% of bridges are closed or load restricted.
Mhm.
Is that 15% of the bridges in Greenville County unincorporated? 50%, so it's 50 T's, shake his head no,
Yeah.
yes. So it's 15% of the bridges overall, some are in the municipalities, some aren't, just in Greenville County.
Almost all these DOT bridges.
Okay,
And just one other note, in all of our analysis and everything, the conversation we're having with our council, we're making a point to make no distinction between ownership.
That's
Because it's
right.
all in our
right,
commuters don't care.
right.
No one cares.
Right, but some are unique in that maybe they're owned by, I don't know, a railroad.
That happens a lot in my
For,
district.
Queen
Yep.
Street being
They-
a prime
they circle
example
me,
of that.
We've identified.
So those are
Yeah,
kind
we
of
got 'em.
standout ones that
Yeah.
another partner is needed.
Yeah.
The governor's budget's got $500 million, I think, for bridges. He just released it.
Yep.
Mhm.
Do we qualify for some of that money?
Yes.
Let's go
We're
after
waiting to
it.
get the details about,
Who
how-
qualifies?
Yes.
Okay. Well, wonderful. And let's
Right.
gonna wait to go get our hands on it, cause
Well,
my little bridge needs
I was
it.
thinking about Queen Street Bridge too.
Yes, it needs
Yeah,
it.
things about the.
Yeah, 1835 is what it said on mark on
That's
the
where all the
wall.
payments from too, right there.
1835.
Yes, I agree.
Oh,
Yes.
Well, we just wanted to get the conversation started with city council and brief you all as the conversation continues. And upon request out of the resolution from county council on December 5th. So if there's no other questions or comments, we'll move on to our next agenda item.
Do we have to pass anything on this?
At this time, I don't think so. I think right now, they just wanted us to be able to start the conversation with you
Okay.
all, let you know what their resolution was. But beyond that, I don't think there's any other asks from the city.
not at this time.
How should we do a sister resolution is really your question.
I think as the conversations continue further, it might be appropriate, but I think it's early in the process right now.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank y'all very
Y'all
much.
come back anytime.
Well, to make a point,
Thanks,
you know,
Keisha,
it
for
does go
helping me
without
with
saying.
the last bridge I had. I
Clint,
appreciate it.
all the efforts of the last 2 or 3 years, in particular, folks on the infrastructure, we already have this data, we already have our priorities, we've already deeply thought about these issues and identified them, so
Yes,
it makes the process easier for us in some cities
Yeah.
probably.
thank Keisha.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, most of this, Clint, y'all have this data.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just pulling it together in the
Yeah, we did
format
our
that they need
infrastructure
it.
assessment.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's just putting it on.
yeah.
And a great example, I think, is when we went to DOT and said, we really need to get the trucks and
Mhm.
the southbound traffic off Stone
Mhm.
and around that natural
Right.
North Pleasantburg, and they say, well, you need to fix North Pleasantburg and Wade Hampton first before
Right.
we start putting more cars.
But that
in.
pavement management plan was, I mean, I know we got that presentation from you maybe 2 years ago, 22, 21.
2021.
Yeah, so a
We can-
great start, and the NIB certainly identified a lot.
We can do some additional updates on that in the coming months.
Mhm.
All right. Patricia, you got 10 minutes.
All right, I'll keep it short. So really the purpose of today is to receive feedback from council as to the business license tax elements that are at council's discretion so that we are prepared for the 2025 license renewal season.
So let's just make sure y'all know this is conversation for 1 year from now. So we have plenty of time to start these conversations before next year's renewal, and also to have any other conversations within the community that we need to have between now and then.
Okay.
Because for this year, we've moved forward with the bare minimum
Yes.
required.
That's right.
Correct.
So because the
Because of the time frame.
timeframe
we were
and
under.
making sure that we weren't rushing.
All right, so just gonna go through a quick overview. Confirm that we are compliant with the Business License Standardization Act, talk about what are items that are at council's discretion, discussion for 2025 renewals, and then any questions or hopefully some feedback at the end. So again, what is a business license tax? Defined as an excise tax levied on businesses for the privilege of doing business within a city. Why is it important to the city? It is our second largest revenue source. So, we have completed all of the required items, which is primarily, the NICS coding as of 12/31. So we're good with the Standardization Act. The items that are discretionary, the tax rates per class, that includes the base rate as well as the additional per thousand rate for the majority of businesses. Unfortunately, railroads and there's certain other legislative carve-outs that we don't have the authority to change their rates. We are also at your discretion, non-resident rates. They're typically double. Whether or not to use a declining scale and what that scale looks like, what the gross revenue bands are, and then also economic incentives are all at your discretion. So I know leading up to the 2024, renewals, looked at several different scenarios with various, gross income threshold levels, and so ideally, what I've heard from staff is we want to move away from the declining scale because it would simplify the process internally as well as for the businesses that are renewing. For whatever reason, they just don't understand it. And there's several communities that have moved away from the declining scale. But with that means we need to look at lower additional gross income rates so that there's not a huge, windfall of revenue, to be fair to those businesses. And then also we could look at the gross income threshold to lessen burden of businesses that have high revenue streams. So just want to get some feedback about what you might want to see, and
We're looking for a little direction on how council would like us to start moving as we have this conversation over the next few months.
if there is an appetite for it, if there's not, so.
An appetite for a declining scale?
Or to get rid of the
Removing the
declining
declining
scale, and if we do, what,
What parameters would you
what
like to
parameters
see
would
or
you-
be okay with?
Yeah.
What type of, overall,
I mean, my biggest concern is, is really just a jump in taxes by businesses, because they, they can locate anywhere. They don't have to locate in the city. They don't have to do business here. And so, for instance, when the issue was brought up, I had a company call and say, you're about to increase my taxes by $50,000. And so I just want us to be very cognizant. I'm going to encourage everybody to be very cognizant into whatever we do, because I'm not an expert in this area in terms of how to formulate it, but whatever we do, that the increases or decreases are pretty negligible and have a steady rate of increase. That I kind of muddled through that a little bit, but that's just my perspective of wanting to make sure we don't surprise anyone with a substantial tax increase.
So when we were talking about this last late fall, and I'm gonna, you gave some information on the maximum that the majority of businesses' taxes would fall.
Correct, like
Maybe 90% of them?
I feel
98%, 97%?
I feel like
98%?
92%
Okay,
or something.
all right. And then for those that increased, it would increase by X%. And what, I can't remember what that X% was.
It all depends on whatever that individual business's gross income is. So it will vary, it could vary substantially.
Remember, I just want to point
So-
out, gross income is much different, as everyone knows, than net income. So you'll have some retailers that the gross income is $2 million because that's the amount of inventory they move. Or you might have an independent, I'll leave Sphinx out because it's a big company, but you'll have an independent gas station, let's say, that they make pennies on the dollar, but you're moving a lot of commodities. You could end up with millions and millions of dollars in gross income, but the net is much different than the gross.
And the gross income is actually stipulated by the Business License Standardization Act. So we don't have any wiggle room there.
Well, that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is when you talk about gross income, someone may have a gross income of $125 million.
But that's not their profit.
That's not their profit.
Yes, understood.
What I liked about what was proposed last time was the idea that it reduced taxes on smaller businesses, and would therefore create more opportunity for smaller businesses to get started in the city, create more entrepreneurial, as far as in the city. But I get your point about what the difference is, and maybe we need to try to play around with the numbers to try to lessen that impact. But beyond that, I think we need to have a real philosophical discussion about what we want in the city. Do we want smaller entrepreneurial companies coming here and making it easier for them, or do we want to go after the big, ticket companies that have huge numbers of revenue and the like?
Do we
But
have land to become?
I don't think it's cut and dry like that. I don't think that you are separating this out by larger companies from smaller companies. I don't think that.
Larger revenue companies, because that's what it came down to.
Gross income, yes.
It was the gross income. It was the companies that were going to get hit were the companies with the larger gross incomes. The companies that were going to get a benefit were ones with lower gross income.
But that's why I was making the point that you could have an entrepreneur that still is making a huge gross income, huge relative.
Yeah.
But still the margins are so small that. What's that, Mayor? I'm sorry.
So make it, I just said Costco and places like that are really where business licenses really come from. Duke Power, Duke Energy, retailers.
Yeah.
Those were in the 8% where it was going to go up.
I think I'll make the argument again that, in the day when supply chains are down, inflation is way up, you cannot find workers for anything, businesses are just getting hammered left and right, that I think it's incumbent upon us that we do have a robust business license structure, that we don't, we don't add to that.
But was this not, this was a way to lower it for 92% of them?
92%.
And
And we can look at, that was without,
8% was gonna take on almost $1 million. That
that was,
$800,000.
that was without any income thresholds.
Yeah.
So
So is there a way to cap
there's
that?
opportunity to cap it at, say,
That's
100
right.
million or
Moving
200.
forward.
Yes, yes.
yeah, as we're going, yeah.
So that for those in the 8%, there's a cap that they can't be pounded.
And
Yeah, so they won't lose.
if there's a
It's
certain, like,
75
threshold
million
that
and
people are
100
getting.
million.
So let's play around with the numbers this
Yes.
year
And work our way through.
and work
Can
our way
you
But
through.
it would still be an increase for those 8%.
There's always gonna be some winners and losers.
Right, we were trying to keep that increase down, and so when we were looking at the 75 million and the 100 million cap, it was trying to keep their increase percentages down, so it wouldn't be as high without having the cap. So I think where we were wanting to go is the elimination of the declining scale and a cap at the income.
And didn't in the discussion, forgive me if I misheard this, is Karen in here? Yes, Karen and Patricia. We've spent a fair amount of time reimbursing businesses
Mhm.
or sending a check back because of the
Mhm.
misunderstanding of that declining scale. In
Yes.
other words, they misunderstand it, and we're spending time sending checks back to them.
And Karen Osborne and Jody Dudash can elaborate on that. They're in the revenue department.
To John's point, can you create a list for us for which companies would be hurt?
So I'm not allowed to do that,
Okay.
to give,
Category, you can do categories.
I can
Okay.
do categories.
Can you do categories?
Sure.
So, because like I say, I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, if there's, if there's someone who's making a whole bunch of revenue, but very low profit margin, we don't want to tax that business out of, wanting to be in the city. But at the same token, if those aren't the categories that are being hurt,
That's right.
then that sort of removes that from the analysis somewhat. So,
Auto dealers probably,
say again?
auto dealers probably.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but not all of them are in the city. Some of them are in those,
Seven auto
like,
dealers in
Well,
the
one
city.
of
maybe.
them's, one of them's in the middle of the city, but it's
some
not
of
in the
them are in
city.
those donuts. Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
We
They
have
don't even
7 auto
pay.
dealers in the city.
Yeah, they don't even pay.
And then we see a 15.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, yes, you're open to the conversation, that you want to see the numbers and understand the parameters and the options.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
So we come back and have further conversation on?
Yes.
But but we still need to keep in mind, small businesses are the reason that we do as well as we do. We still need to understand that. And it does make sense for us. And as long as I've been on council, it's always been that some people will always get an increase and some people will not. That's always been the process, so we need to make it as simple as possible. So it's not a bang and kill somebody. But we do make sure that the 92% should be the one that we're looking at in order to sustain. But when we look at the 8%, we don't look at it as if we get a guarantee, but we need to make it non-impact
Equitable. I mean, we need to,
or less impact.
Right.
Yes.
it's less of a burden,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that
So,
sounds good. I think everybody's on the same page. Cool.
Sounds great.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much. We appreciate it. Thank you, Patricia, and we'll continue this conversation so that we can have plenty of time between now and the end of the year to figure out our direction for next year. And with that, we are going back into executive session.
This is like the Shazam.
Yes.
What's our,
Boards and commissions.
Yeah, and they keep bringing more people, right?
Tell us what it is.
The door open.
all in favor, say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
I said,
Subsection A1, matters related to appointments to cities, boards, and commissions.
I have a motion and a second.
Hold on.
Some of.
We are-
And economic stuff.
John seconds.
And then, so, under subsections A2 and 5 for ED and contract matters.